DealStreetAsia PE Thesis Summit. My name is Andi Haswidi. I'm the head of ASEAN research at DealStreetAsia. So this session marks the launch of our latest study done in partnership with Mitra Bukalapak titled Indonesia Warung Tech Review 2022, MSMEs at the Vanguard of Retail Revolution. So in this session, I will be sharing our key findings and later on, I will be joined by Mitra Bukalapak CEO Howard Gani and 500 Global Managing Partner Khailee to discuss the findings and to talk about the digitalization of MSMEs in Indonesia and why it matters for all stakeholders. Thank you, Howard and Khailee, for taking the time to join this discussion. Can you hear me well?
We can hear you loud and clear, man.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks so much. So without further ado, please allow me 10 minutes to share the findings. And to our audience, you can access the full report on our website on DealStreetAsia.com. So this study adopts mixed methods, which also include a survey of 1,000 warung operators across Indonesia. By warung operators, we mean those whose business involve retail FMCG and digital products such as phone credits and internet data packages, and whose business can be classified into micro, small, and medium. For this study, we look back into the history of retail digitalization in Indonesia. We separate the timeline into four major periods: early adopter, the dot-com boom, and the Web 2.0 era, when the e-commerce finally gained significant traction with the emergence of online marketplaces such as Bukalapak, Lazada, and Tokopedia. So the first e-wallets were also launched during this period with the aim to improve digital transactions and deepen financial inclusion in the country. By 2012, we entered the current era, which is the age of Industry 4.0. We saw a surge in venture capital investment into e-commerce business in Indonesia, making the country the largest destination for e-commerce investment in Southeast Asia. So at the start of this era, e-commerce players were already thinking about the potential of moving offline to disrupt the traditional retail by empowering small retailers with technology. So when Bukalapak was launched in Mitra Bukalapak was launched in 2016, it had relatively simple mandate, namely to service cash transactions for online purchases. But by 2018, Mitra Bukalapak sharpened its focus to cater micro and small retailers and added a diverse range of products and services. As you can see in this slide, Mitra Bukalapak has services such as telco products, bill payments on top of FMCG, obviously, gaming vouchers, logistics, and so on. So the company can be credited with pioneering Warung Tech, a catch-call descriptor for a vast assortment of services offered by startups that aim to modernize and digitalize Indonesia's vast traditional retail sector. So Mitra Bukalapak's pioneering steps were later followed by a surge of new players aiming to tackle one or more aspects of building an O2O commerce model. There's a big question around the actual impact of this O2O commerce on the warungs and MSMEs in general. And there's also a question how they're actually improving FMCG supply chain as well as other principles in the ecosystem. So these are the objectives of our study. So let's examine who the warung operators are based on our survey. So we found 45% are female and 55% male. Most of them are between 25 to 35 years of age, and 58% are married. About half have been running their business for more than 3 years. At least 39% of warung operators earn less than the average minimum wage in the country, but that's coming only from their warung business. That said, 59% of these warung operators actually have other sources of income. Could be farming, construction work, employment at a small restaurants, and other labor work, basically. So due to the nature of their business, the most common product restocking cycles happen every week, and once in every 2 weeks as well. They mostly allocate around 1 million per week. So here's the interesting part. Warung operators cited many challenges facing their business, and these include, customers failing to repay their debt, unfavorable location, limited kiosk space, and other. But the chief among these concerns are the mushrooming of modern retail stores, particularly convenience stores. So let's have a look at the O2O adoption in Indonesia. So we define penetration based on the number of adopters who use the apps at least once a month. So we define these cohort as recurring users. So recurring users make up 31% of total respondents. And as expected, the adoption rate is or penetration is definitely higher in Java relative to other areas. Tier 1 adoption is also predictably higher due to market sophistication. But interestingly enough, Tier 4 is also higher than Tier 2 and Tier 3. This is likely due to weaker traditional supply chain networks, which in turn drives the appeal of O2O applications. So next slide, the adoption of warung apps truly exploded during the pandemic period. Close to 2/3 of users claim they first adopted the apps in the past 12 months. And in total, 24 months is around 80%. So that's a huge change that happened during the pandemic. So this period obviously coincided with a lot of new players entering the market, as social distancing measures and travel restrictions ushered in new ways of doing business. Most of the adopters reported fairly positive perception on the warung apps, with 75% expressing satisfaction. They cited, save time and money, ease of transaction as their biggest benefits of O2O apps. But on top of that, the adopters said they benefit from competitive pricing, and consequently, nearly all adopters claim that the apps have allowed them to save on procurement costs, with 96% noticing an increase in income, relative to before adoption. So for the purpose of this study, we cross-pollinate survey findings to identify statistical relationship between the variables that may influence adoption rate. So this relationship are represented in the form of indices from 0 to 1, with 0 indicating basically zero adoption, and 1 is indicating 100% of adoption of daily usage, basically. So from this indices, we learned that O2O apps serve as an indispensable tool for higher productivity. This is indicated by the fact that adoption levels do rise together with education level and the length of experience that the warung operators have. This means that the more experienced you are, the more likely you are going to adopt O2O. In the next chart, you can see how the adoption levels are higher among warungs that have higher customer volume, and with those that have higher restocking frequency. I mean, this is predictable as well, as as restocking frequency gets more often. I think the warung definitely benefit from O2O apps. And the next slide, it's also interesting to see that adoption levels are higher among warungs that experience business growth in the past 3 months. So basically, we asked the warung whether how they review their business performance in the past 3 months. And for those that actually experience positive, relatively among O2 adopters, they experience better business performance than those who don't. Now, we're moving on to we tried to define the financial inclusion level within this warung operators. So we have many findings in regards to this, but let's start with savings. The majority of respondents save up around up to 500,000. This is only 35 US dollar per week, which is quite small. But what's interesting here is that O2O app adopters have greater tendency to save money compared to non-users. And this is also compared to those that use the app occasionally. So we spoke with the warung operators, and our conclusion is that digitalization has allowed them to better manage their own finances, and they also consider putting money in e-wallets as part of their savings, because a lot of them just don't have bank accounts, right? So in the next chart, you can actually see that the propensity to borrow money is also higher among recurring O2O users. 51% of warung operators in this group plan to acquire loans in the next 3 months versus 33% for occasional users and 22% for those who never use the apps. So we attribute this to the fact that O2O adopters tend to have, again, higher volume of customers and faster restocking cycles. What's also interesting is the variety of investment products that they have. Warung owners show some level of sophistication in the type of investment choices, which include mutual fund products, stocks, even stocks, right? Bonds, cryptocurrency, and NFT. I mean, this is not surprising. This is definitely a fairly new phenomenon in Indonesia, which has been driven by the rise of tech startups, basically, particularly in the past 12 months. You can mention companies such as Ajaib, Stockbit, Bibit, Peluang, and many other that have allowed investment as low as 10,000 rupiah, and that's only 70 US cents in securities or in cryptos. So here's another quite interesting data point to look at. So we asked warung owners how their business fared in the past 3 months. Bear in mind that they just entered the Omicron phase when we asked this, when we did the survey, which is in February, right? So we asked them how their revenue changed. The index clearly shows that O2O adopters tend to have better business performance relative to non-users. And on the next slide, you can see how, sort of like the forward-looking indicator, as we ask the warung owners how they think about their business, how their business will fare in the next 3 months. And again, the index shows recurring users are more optimistic. And finally, in this report, we also do a comparative study with Kiranas in India. You can access our analysis on our report in more depth. I won't be highlighting in this session to save time. So that's basically the gist of my presentation. You can find more in the report, and let's move to discussion. Howard, Khailee, thank you so much for waiting and for listening in.
Very welcome.
Welcome.
Cool. Can I just first get your feedback, maybe from Khailee? What's your thought on the survey findings, just by looking at my presentation?
Well, I think it's wonderful to have, and very additive to have a very quantitative view. I think definitely aside from DealStreetAsia's study, I think Nielsen and a few others have started to want to show us how large, right, this opportunity actually is, and start putting some numbers and putting some methodologies to track it. So big ups to DealStreetAsia for working on this project.
Okay, thanks. But Howard, maybe for our audience, some of our global audience may not be too familiar with Mitra Bukalapak and the O2O ecosystem in Indonesia in general. Can you please explain Mitra Bukalapak's recent data and what are the major pain points that you're trying to solve? Go ahead, Pak.
Yes, thank you, Andi. That was a great presentation, by the way. So if I can start off with just a bit of a story on how we start Mitra Bukalapak. I recall the story back in 2018 when we talked actually to mom and pop shop. There was a mom and pop shop next to our office back then, and when we start talking to them, they felt that the feedback that they get, that they're being left out by the digitalization movement, by the e-commerce movement that was happening at the time as well, and probably at quite an inflection point, right? And all the marketplace functionalities, the features that we're building are mostly for the end consumers, and obviously this warung and mom and pop shop have a different level of technology literacy as well, right? And we have a thinking of, okay, what sort of features, what sort of applications can we build, or digitalization can we build for this mom and pop shop that we're talking to? And our objective was, we wanted to touch these people live. We wanted to build a fair economy for all. We wanted to give opportunity for Mitra, for these guys, for the warungs, to grow their business and to improve their livelihood. I mean, if you think about it, the whole Indonesia, 5% is penetrated by the e-commerce. Right? E-commerce penetration is only 5%, and that's tier 1 city, right? In tier 2 cities, probably going to be less, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, and so on. And Mitra right now, we serve the 95%, right? We serve the rest, right? And coming back to your question, yes, back in 2018 till today, we've grown tremendously. We've grown. I think in the past few reports, 8, 9, 10 million. The last one was 10 million registered Mitras, and we're serving about 50 million customers, offline customers a month. And we, in the way we evolve as well, it's not that we don't just sell the groceries or the instant noodles or the mineral waters. This is especially important for the global audience here. We empower them. We give them access to more and more products. We have airtime top-ups, electricity top-ups, credit bill payments, water bill payments, cable TV, land tax payments, vehicle registration payment, Andi. Bus tickets, train tickets, e-wallet top-up, which is something that's growing in the Indonesian market, in the traditional trade market. Yeah. There's also game vouchers that's picking up. Toll card top-ups, so people can top up their toll card before they will go past the gate. Even buying gold bullions, we have that feature introduced to the Mitra, right, to becoming money transfer agents as well as logistic agents. So there's a lot of range of products that we're just opening up to them once they sign up to the Mitra Bukalapak app. And they will become, the way we think about it is that they will not just be the commerce central within their towns, but we will build them to be some sort of the economy central, kind of the driver of the economy for their town. We envision that once the educational level rises, the economy rises for that village or for the area that the Mitra is sitting in, the Mitra will become central to that development. So that is kind of the grand vision that we're going towards.
Right. So in the survey, we found that more than 50% of adopters, actually it's 80% adopters, joined the app in the past 24 months, right? So what was the experience at Mitra Bukalapak? Can you hear me?
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Can you repeat, Andi?
From our survey, around 80% of O2O adopters, I'm talking about the entire O2O landscape, right? Not just Mitra Bukalapak. They joined the app mostly in the past 24 months. So I'm curious what was happening with Bukalapak in terms of new adoption.
Yeah. If I may rephrase the question, so just to be clear. So you said that most adopting in the past 24 months, and then what's going on in Mitra Bukalapak? Okay. So we've seen similar trends, especially with the whole COVID situation that hits us as well. Now, through I kind of remember the story as well when we hear back from the Mitra as well. Throughout the pandemic, we know that people doesn't really want to travel much, right? And this is true during the early onset in perhaps the 2020 or end of 2019. So they kind of went exploring around their blocks, right? And obviously Mitra being more of a closer where people live and be closer to where people work as well, they kind of become the go-to point, right? And people start realizing that, hey, actually now the Mitra or the Warung next door is able to provide all these kind of products that I described before, and there's no real need for them to kind of go to go to a bigger supermarket or to go out to the mall and find all the things that they need, right? And this is especially kind of the trends that we see as well. And Mitra starts to become central to this development. And we've been in the market for a couple of years, right? There used to be cycles, and when COVID hits, it kind of changes things. Right? It accelerates within the whole digitalization of the Mitras. And we saw a lot of new Mitras coming in as well. The Mitra Bukalapak business really surpassed our expectation, if I can say that, both in numbers of users and transaction volumes. And that's why we're able to grow, right? The one that I said 8, 9 million, 10 million, the last numbers that we released was 10 million. And from that 10 million, we're able to reach out to almost, I think, more than 50 millions of offline customers through them today.
All right. Thank you, Pak Howard. And Khailee, if I can just move to you, we know that 500 Global is an early investor in Bukalapak, but can you tell us your involvement in Mitra Bukalapak itself, and what's the biggest appeal of this kind of business for investors? Sorry, Khailee, you're muted.
Sorry, thank you for that. Yeah, one of the biggest draws for us to invest so early in Bukalapak back in 2014 was that they understood the DNA of the company, really understood the power of community. And they also understood that Indonesia is much more than tier 1 cities. In fact, a lot of its early gravity and traction was built by the fact that even tier 2, tier 3 cities, they had their own community pop-ups, not Bukalapak. The people who live in some tier 2, tier 3 cities create their own stalls to educate people how to use Bukalapak. So Bukalapak has always been very community-centric. Now, around 2015, 16, when we got Willix, the current CEO, involved in the Bukalapak, we could see a real growth dynamic that leaned into its strengths and started to build a lot of momentum. And so the draw and the natural extension of serving the existing community in tier 2, tier 3 cities was very natural for them. In fact, it was like a natural gravity for them to just keep building that momentum. So for us, the biggest appeal of Bukalapak is they continue to remain on the largest opportunity in Indonesia, which is the rest of the 95% of commerce. They continue to be the market leader on that. And they continue to be the only company that is obsessed and putting so much focus into this and also proving the results. So I think the continued confidence of 500 Global and a lot of its investors who's involved and invested in Bukalapak as a public company as well continues to build on that compounding value of that momentum.
All right. So Khailee, just to add to that, if we look at closely on, Bukalapak financial results, you can see Mitra Bukalapak is, contributing a lot, right? And in terms of growth, I think it grew like in the first 9 months, it grew around 4 times, while the e-commerce business, the online marketplace business itself is only growing about, I think, 5%. Do you see that Mitra Bukalapak model actually, surpassing the e-commerce?
Well, we live in a world today where, of course, like Howard will do comment on this about, but we live in a world today that we can't just put businesses into these boxes per se, because the growth in Mitra and the growth in online, they actually feed onto each other. So a lot of stuff that a lot of the people, the conveniences that you and I, Pak Andi, you and I enjoy in the city, and Howard all of us enjoy in the city, everyone in a different part of Indonesia, they want the same thing. We want the same conveniences, we want the same products, and whether or not it gets delivered to us by someone or whether we can pick it up right next door, we want the same things. So I think we're entering a world where software ate the world. It's about all commerce, it's about offline to offline, online to online, online to offline, all of it in all commerce, and that's really what Bukalapak has really proven to do. But Howard, please, you can comment on that as well.
Yes, thanks, Khailee. So we're always looking to grow, right? We're excited about it, and as Khailee said, the segment is massive. Right? It's a big opportunity, 95% untouched, and there's a lot of opportunity to grow, right? This is a major segment. Imagine turning every rural part into kind of a small city, and then the way we envision it is kind of centralized towards the Mitra that we're empowering with digitalization. Right, we give them access to products, we give them access to different ranges, and we also empower them, we educate them, we give them financial education as well, so they can grow their business. Right, I mean, I can tell you stories about our internal survey says that an average Mitra can grow 3x, right, and that's on average. I've listened to Mitra and I've heard from them as well. They can grow 7 to 8x. Right, before they join Mitra Bukalapak versus after, as in today. Right? So the impact that we're giving them is just so massive, right? And we know that there are more opportunities for us out there, Andy.
So Andy, if I may kind of round out just that last point there, right? A lot of people look at urbanization and look at so-called e-commerce, right? Urbanization is not a location. Urbanization and advancement is actually about access. So it doesn't matter where you're living in Indonesia. If you get the same access that you get in Jakarta, in fact, I think you probably have a higher quality of life, Pak Andy. Maybe less macet, right? But you get more access, right? So
definitely, especially in Bali.
Yeah, that's a good place.
So, Pak Howard, currently you have 42 products, right? I mean, that's quite a lot. I mean, in a way, O2O apps is now serving like a super app for the warungs. But can you just talk more about the digital products? I mean, how much does it contribute to your business? And is there how's the growth trajectory? As we know, I mean, gaming is growing so much. It's already around 1.5 billion in terms of GMV for mobile gaming alone, right? Last year. So can you tell me about digital products, how it's doing, and what's the outlook?
Thanks, Andy. So I think digital products for us is one of the big pillars, right? I mean, similarly to physical goods and financial products as well. For our Mitra, like selling virtual product is really an easy decision to make, because one, you don't have the need of a big working capital, right? And in terms of access, you can sell just in time, literally, if you call it, you try and interpret it to a physical goods sales, right? And I've heard from, like I said before, I heard from my team, right? The Mitra always bring questions around, what are these digital goods for? What are these game vouchers for that's available on the Mitra apps? What is this e-wallet product for? And all this is with the purpose for them to improve their product knowledge, for them to sell better. Because if you think about it, right, for them, by just simply opening the Mitra Bukalapak app, they're able to increase their offline sales. They're able to literally, the next customer that they face, they're able to offer way more products than they have before. Right? And that's where we understood for them to be able to increase their average sales by 3x, and some of them 7, 8, or even more. Right? And I've heard these stories, and this is very inspirational for us to keep going. This is what drives us, Andi. And digital products is definitely one of those bigger pillars for us.
Okay. So Khailee, you're, obviously as an investor, you're looking at Asia. You're looking at Southeast Asia, South Asia, right? And East Asia even. So is there sort of like a market where Indonesia can benchmark itself for something that would indicate the future trajectory? Whether it's China and India. What can you share about your review of the O2O landscape globally and how Indonesia can take lessons from it?
Yeah, so 500 Global, we've invested in 2,700 startups in about 80 countries, from which about 48 unicorns actually emerged from that portfolio, of which, of course, Bukalapak is a shining star. Here's the thing about we discovered from O2O in different markets, and we're talking about even in Egypt, even in like the tier 2, tier 3 in Saudi, even to we invested in similar models in Pakistan called Retailo. Now, and you compare these models with India, what we start to see is that it's still day one for serving the rest of the world, right? There's 4.5 billion people on the internet, which means there's 4.5 billion people who are not even on the internet, right? And the next few billion coming on, that is the story of rural commerce. That story of tier 2, tier 3, and people are discovering what to do. So we have an eye on which of our companies in the portfolio is obsessed, who has taken a lead position, who is innovating quickly, rolling out many, many services. We have an eye on that trend. And we hope to be able to find more of the Bukalapak Mitra story all around the world as well. Now, that being said, is that because we have been early backers of Bukalapak and hence have been at least engaged with Bukalapak through the journey of Mitra, so many founders from the rest of the world, they look up to Bukalapak Mitra. They see Bukalapak Mitra growing so quickly. It's like, how did they offer fintech to all the rural areas all of a sudden? It's like they're seeing every month there's got new news from Bukalapak on like, oh, they offer this, they offer that. It's like even the young startup, they're trying to keep up with a big company like Bukalapak, right? So I feel to your question, Indonesia has I think the whole framework, the whole ecosystem, there's a lot of support, public market, regulators, government, they all are cheering Bukalapak on. Why? When Bukalapak wins, all of Indonesia wins. And we can demonstrate a model. How do we advance entire economies? And I think other nations will be able to learn from Indonesia because of that.
Great. Thanks. Very good catchphrase there, Khailee. I want to switch gears a bit and talk about the recent IPO, Howard. From the 1.5 billion market debut, can you explain how you're utilizing these funds for Mitra Bukalapak expansion? Specifically for Mitra Bukalapak.
Okay, so you're talking about, you're dropping in and out a bit about the utilization of those funds, yeah?
Right? Yes, yeah.
Okay, so yes, we're using the funds in various ways, right? For Mitra Bukalapak, we're looking at a number of ways to improve as we expand further into non-tier 1 cities. That is what we've been doing and will continue doing throughout. We're also looking to get better access to goods, whether physical goods, digital goods, or even financial goods, right? And we've started also a group buying concept for the Mitras. We introducing them to fresh products, right? Which fresh products, you do it differently. You don't, you need to treat them differently, how you carry the inventory, etc. So those kind of the things that we're introducing to the Mitra. We're also there are also other verticals actually that we're excited about, right? We saw the opportunities of the other verticals that has similar traits to how Mitra Bukalapak started and how the warungs and kiosks benefited from digitalization. And this is part of the solutions that we're thinking of bringing in as well. And on top of that, I think the group has publicly released as well in acquisitions, partnerships that we're doing that we believe will help us grow aggressively. Now, there's two things that I'll probably highlight here. One of the things, digital banks, right? There is we actually bought a bank, right? We invested in a bank, right? And we understand that with the mindset that we know that couple this with the Mitra business, we'll be able to offer far better financial products and financial access and grow the financial literacy of the Mitras, right? And we one of the other things is also the e-grocery, right, that we recently announced with Trans. We believe this will significantly enhance the Mitra business, right? Trans being a major player in the offline supermarket business. They have 150,000 SKUs available. They've been in the business for years, right? And they have a lot of experience, a lot of access. We believe, by leveraging all this, we'll be able to grow the Mitra business by leaps and bounds, right? And then we'll be able to improve our pricing, our SLAs, and our reach as well. So we're very excited about this, Andy. But let me also talk to just a word of note as well. I mean, we raised 1.5 billion, right? We have a full vision of what we want to do with it, but we are investing very strategically. right? We are very disciplined financially. If you look at our numbers and it's publicly available, we probably only spend 10% of that, or less than 10% of that recently, and we're very disciplined about it, right? And I mean, look at the case of Alobank the dealer bank that we recently invested. We're able to secure it at a very good valuation from us, and we believe, I think it's 1.7x of price to book, and we believe that there will be tons of integration synergy opportunity that we can just do together with Mitra Bukalapak on top of that.
Yeah, can you share with us more on that in terms of the synergies with Mitra Bukalapak? Because from our survey, we know there's definitely huge appetite among the warung operators to get working capital, right? And as of now, a lot of the O2Os, they don't see O2O apps as sort of a gateway to access financing. So what's your plan on that?
Yes. No, I know. I hear in terms of working capital, you're talking about microloans, yeah, Andi.
Yeah.
We hear the same as well, right? We hear the same kind of feedback from the Mitra as well. Like one of the examples that I hear from the Mitra was, I think in the feedbacks that we do quite routinely, quite regularly, is their wish to expand their businesses, right? One of the major hurdle that they always face is cash.
Yeah.
Grow that organically, it will probably take them years, right, to grow and meaningfully. And they're not after a big ticket size loans, right? They're after a lot of times it's small micro loans that help them to kind of cycle the money through and cash and etc. to expand their working capital. Now we actually have introduced, and in the process of introducing more, with some of the major partnerships that we're doing as well. We're in the process of doing more and more forms of microloans to the Mitra. We're looking to give the Mitra basically a fair go, right, to access financial instruments that has been more available for modern retailers, but limited to the Mitras. And we kind of believe that the challenge here is in the how, is in the execution, right, which really includes how we introduce and help improve the Mitra's literacy, as well as how we set up a financial credit scoring system to help us, all our financial partners, to have a balanced and healthy portfolio.
Great. Okay, Khailee, I just want to ask you about the financial inclusion side, and I want to get your view, your regional view, basically. So just by looking at the Indonesia market, right, we last year MSMEs demand has in terms of demand for loans is 190 billion, and the banking sector could only provide 40% of that, right? So there's a huge funding gap. And if we look at the fintech lending side in Indonesia, the P2P platform, for instance, they could only provide 2 billion. I mean, granted that the ecosystem is still fairly young, but I'm pretty surprised that the level of disruption is not yet, does not really live up to its hype. So what's the issue in terms of, tech companies disrupting financial inclusion in emerging markets?
That's solid data points. Here's how things kind of gets there, where we want to close the lending gap. Because this issue is not just an Indonesian issue, it's actually like a global issue where it comes to rural development, it comes to MSME development. So before the loans can happen, we need the data. So the folks who can actually get the data first, they will be able to credit score, would be able to build the loan book, the credit models, so that we can actually safely and reliably lend. So then it asks us the question, how do we close that lending gap in Indonesia? Then we ask ourselves, who has the most data on MSME transaction? And this is one of the pillars why Bukalapak Mitra has been collecting all of that data, and to identify out of the 10 million Mitras it has, it not only can understand on a granular each and every one of those Mitra and what they're buying, what they're selling, but also they can build actually predictive models on similar types of Mitra. Think about it like Facebook lookalike audiences, right? So I think the data model comes first, then you have the credit model, and then you can checkmate. with all of the lending.
So you're saying we're still in that period of actually trying to collect data about and learn the market before
I think
fintech can
Bukalapak Mitra actually
actually.
has I think Bukalapak has already started lending to Mitra. I think Howard mentioned a little bit through just micro loans to test it out with other lending partners. But also sometimes loans doesn't have to come just as cash. Sometimes it comes as trade credit, right? So I mean, definitely Howard, if you have more to add on that.
No, yes, very, very interesting questions, Andy. I mean, the mitras that we face and the ones that I've met and heard as well, are not normally the ones that have access to bank loans, right? And that's probably why that's where the 60% comes in, right? Is they're not the ones that will go to a bank and have maybe a relationship manager to talk about asset payment options, etc. These are small micro businesses that make up our mitra, right? I think the 60% are not pretty much captured because a big chunk of it are still unbankable, right? And those are always the challenge for the banks and the financial institutions to reach. It is perhaps a mix of low financial literacy, yes, and the limited availability of what Khailee mentioned, kind of reliable credit scorings in that segment, right? And hence, the financial institutions are probably trying to balance the risk, as I can say. This is a position that we think Mitra can come in as well. As we build enough historical data, buying, selling patterns, we will be more confident kind of in building the model and help financial institutions to balance the risk.
Here's what we've seen in Africa as well and other parts of the world is that there is an entire industry of people who want to lend to the Mitras. They're called impact loans. So they come from organizations such as FMO, DEG, a lot of development finance organizations, institutions. They are looking for someone who can really offer the credit book and also the credit model and also the access to manage these loans. So I think that even though it's currently a work in progress that is happening already, like the future will come more quickly than we think.
Okay, great. So Khailee, Howard, we have around 5 more minutes, and I'm gonna try to allow questions from the audience. Okay, so this is one question. I don't quite understand this, but maybe I'll just throw it at you, right? So how do you deal? I think this is I think as for Howard, how do you deal with cross-border taxes, GST, and income tax and compliance? Maybe this question is directed how you're managing the income tax of the merchants of the of the warung. Maybe that's where the question is.
Yeah. I mean, yes, we don't do any cross-border businesses in Mitra Bukalapak. I think one of the things that all the products that we sell through the platform is definitely compliant with government regulations, right? Whether we be it access channel license or tax. And one of the things that we also help the Mitra, and this is in line with the financial literacy that we're helping to improve, that is also making them aware. Like we work with aware of the taxations out there, whether it's GST, VAT, income tax. We work with the taxation office as well for them to come and present to our Mitra, and our Mitras are being made aware of what is the regulations out there, what they need to do, what they cannot do, etc. So that's part of the literacy, financial educations that we help to push to the Mitra too, right? And so I hope that answers the question.
And there's also a way to pay taxes using the Mitra app, right?
Correct. So we actually have multiple products to pay taxes too, right? We pay, like I mentioned before, the land taxes, the vehicle registration taxes, even fines. If the Mitras or the customers have incurred somehow some government, to be able to pay through the Mitra, right? And when we have multiple products on government taxes that they're able to get access to.
Okay, so there's another question from the audience. So everyone is rushing to buy a traditional bank in Indonesia. How does each of you see this play out? You can see the question on the general chat box or whatever you like.
Howard? I think the question, I know the audio has been in and out. I think the question was that like other folks have also been rushing in to buy traditional banks in Indonesia. How do you see this play out?
I think the way we see it is that because Mitra Bukalapak, we have a position on when I think about the pillars that we have today, physical goods, digital goods, and financial products. Financial products is really what we are excited about, right? Because this is in line with the way we think about how to improve their livelihood, how to improve their business. One of the biggest pillars is through financial literacy, right? And for me, I don't really have a view on the traditional banks landscape, but for us, the digitalization of banking, the digitalization of the financial products through these banks, I think it'll be very positive. It'll have a very positive effect for us, and that's why we actually invested in Alobank, right? One of the digital banks, bigger digital banks out there, because we believe having that access to those financial products and porting them through our Mitra Bukalapak and giving them through our community in Mitra community, and then through that community they're able to offer it to their offline customers. It just gives them a seamless access, a seamless channel to introduce these financial products. That's the way I see it. Maybe Khailee, do you have any comments?
I think understanding we're also running into time. Banks, in the end, if each of you, let's say Pak, Andy, Howard, or you already own a bank, that's fine. Okay, let's say I also own a bank, right? Let's say all three of us each one own a bank. The question becomes, what are we using the bank for? Who are we going to serve? Like for the longest time, all the conferences around the world talk about Indonesia. We talk about the population, 280 million. Bukalapak is going to use this bank to serve all of the 280 million people. This is the true story of Indonesia, and Bukalapak is proving that with its momentum in that direction. Every single Mitra across Indonesia will have the same conveniences as all of us in the city. That is a fact. That is the eventuality, the eventual trajectory of where Bukalapak's headed at light speed, I might add. So hence the bank falls into that context because people in the city want banking services too. So I feel when a lot of investors are looking at Bukalapak today, those who are looking a bit closely can see the compounding value of where this asset is headed. So hopefully this HBO, you accept crypto payment or not, right? Well, why not we leave that for the next panel, right? But again, like I just want to, because like DealStreetAsia is such a powerful platform that reaches investors around the world, not just Indonesia as well. I think it's important for global investors to recognize the true potential of Indonesia as a nation to unlock its financial opportunity. You're going to need companies like Bukalapak who actually understand Mitra and understand the rest of Indonesia and how to serve them.
Great. Khailee, thank you so much. I think that wraps up our session for today. I appreciate you attending the session. Pak Howard, Khailee, thank you. And to our audience, please download our report on DealStreetAsia.com, and we look forward to your feedback. Thank you so much, Khailee. Stay safe and good luck. Pak Howard, goodbye.
Thank you,
Thank you so much, Pak Andy. All right, see y'all.
Everyone.